Okay, let's talk about shamanism. I mean, this is one of humanity's most ancient and widespread spiritual practices. And today we're going to trace its absolutely incredible journey through time. We'll dig into its core beliefs, look at how it showed up all over the globe, and see how its echoes are, believe it or not, still with us today.
So, when you hear the word shamanism, what comes to mind? Probably a lot of mystery, maybe some intense rituals, right? But here's the thing. For ancient peoples, this was actually a super practical system. It was their way of making sense of a world they saw as alive with spirit. They believed that getting sick or having bad luck wasn't just random chance. No, it was often a sign of some kind of spiritual imbalance. Let's dive into that worldview, because it's pretty fascinating.
All right, here's a quick roadmap for our journey. First, we're going to define what shamanism really is, cutting through the stereotypes. Then, we'll step into the spirit world they believed in and look at the sacred techniques they used. And, putting on our historian hats, we'll see how these practices looked different from culture to culture. We'll also get into the big clash with major religions, and finally, see how these ancient ideas are popping up in some surprising new forms today.
All right, first things first. To really get this, we have to push past all the cliches and stereotypes you might have heard. Let's get to the heart of what shamanism was and is as a real historical and spiritual practice.
Okay, so this is probably the most crucial thing to understand right up front. Shamanism isn't an organized religion, like, say, Christianity or Islam. You won't find a single holy book or a big central prophet. Think of it more like a set of practices, a collection of spiritual technologies, really. And even though these practices popped up independently all over the world, they all revolved around one core idea: that there's an unseen spirit world, and a trained practitioner, the shaman, can actually travel there.
And when I say ancient, I mean really ancient. We're talking evidence that goes back at least 10,000 years, with Siberia as a likely starting point. And from there, it just spread everywhere, showing up on pretty much every single continent. It was so influential that it was even at the heart of the massive Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan. Their state religion was a form of shamanism called Tengrism. And now, fast forward thousands of years, and guess what? These very same core ideas are showing up again, in places like modern psychology and the wellness world.
So, to really grasp what shamanism is all about, you've got to try and see the world through their eyes. And in their world, the physical and the spiritual, they aren't separate things at all. They're woven together, deeply and fundamentally connected.
And this worldview is just fascinating. For them, everything has a spirit or a life force. We're talking rocks, trees, animals, everything. So if you get sick, it's not just a physical thing. It might be seen as a spiritual problem, like you've lost some of your personal energy. The idea is that there's this whole unseen world of spirits living right alongside us, and the shaman, well, they're the person who can actually see and talk to them. This whole universe is typically seen as having three levels. You've got an upper world for gods, a lower world for the spirits of the dead, and then our world, the middle world, caught right in between.
Okay, so that's the what. But what about the how? How does a shaman actually do this stuff? How do they make that trip to the spirit world to find lost energy or get some answers? Well, let's get into their toolkit and techniques. Yeah, the methods are pretty intense, and they're definitely not for the faint of heart. But they usually fall into one of three main paths. The first is a physical ordeal. We're talking about pushing the body to its absolute limit, like with extreme cold or fasting, to kind of crack open normal consciousness. The second path is through rhythmic sound. Think of that constant, hypnotic beat of a drum. It can literally pull you into a trance, letting your mind travel. And the third, well, it's the use of psychoactive plants, certain wild mushrooms, for example, to just directly open the doors of perception.
And this is where things get really cool from a historian's point of view. You see how this one core idea, shamanism, looks totally different depending on where you are in the world. For instance, in Siberia and Mongolia, the drum is everything. It's not just an instrument, it's seen as a map of the entire cosmos. Then you go to tribal India, and you find practices for healing things like snake bites, which later trickled down and influenced things like tantric yoga. And then, way over in Pakistan, in the Gilgit region, you have practitioners called the Dial Kill, who use this really intense ritual with juniper smoke and goat's blood to talk to spirits. So, you see, the goal is the same, but the methods are incredibly diverse.
So for thousands and thousands of years, shamanism was, in many places, the main spiritual game in town. But then, something changed. The rise of large, organized, monotheistic religions created a huge conflict, a real clash of worldviews that would lead to the decline of these ancient traditions.
I mean, these two worldviews were just fundamentally at odds. In shamanism, spirits are partners you work with, but in many of the new faiths, that exact same thing was called forbidden sorcery. Shamans looked to nature as the source of the divine, while the new religions said no, connection comes through prophets and scripture. And maybe the biggest difference, shamanism was deeply local, tied to a specific tribe and place, while these new faiths had a universal message meant for everyone, everywhere.
And this wasn't just some philosophical debate, you know? It had massive real-world consequences. Just look at the Mongol Empire. Genghis Khan himself, he followed Tengrism, their traditional shamanic faith. But then, just a couple of generations down the line, his grandson, Berke Khan, converts to Islam. That one decision, by one powerful leader, didn't just change his own personal beliefs. It kicked off a chain reaction, leading to the decline of shamanism across a huge part of Central Asia, because this new faith was now the politically and culturally powerful one.
But here's the thing, the story doesn't just end there. Even though traditional shamanism faded in many places, the basic human needs it spoke to, the need for healing, for meaning, for connection, those never went away. And today, we're actually seeing its core ideas bubble back up to the surface in some really surprising ways.
I mean, just think about some of these roles we have today. A life coach who helps you navigate a crisis, an energy healer working to rebalance you, a sound therapist using specific frequencies to help you meditate, a breathwork facilitator who guides you to alter your consciousness just by breathing. Now, obviously the language and the context are totally different, but that core function, guiding someone towards mental, emotional, or spiritual well-being, that is a direct echo of what the shaman did for their tribe.
So when you boil it all down, the practice itself has just transformed. That ancient spiritual knowledge has sort of moved out of the tribal forests and into our modern worlds of therapy and wellness. The packaging looks completely different, for sure, but that fundamental human quest for healing and wholeness, that's as timeless as it gets.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. In our crazy, fast-paced world, as these ancient ideas about healing and connection start to find new life, what part of the shaman's journey do you think we need most today? Is it the connection to nature, the journey into our own minds, or that deep focus on finding spiritual balance? Something to think about. That's all for this explainer.